Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. This episode is going to be all about how to overcome body shame. I recently read an article by Rebecca Skirtsfield. She's a registered dietitian and she's also an author of the book Body Kindness. Her philosophy is incredible and one that aligns with mine, which is really shifting the focus away from weight loss and really more towards mindful self-care and practicing appreciating yourself and your well-being and focusing on if you want to start moving your body more and exercising more and eating healthier. Those are all because you want to improve your physical health, your mental health, your emotional well-being, not so much driven specifically to look a certain way or for a number on a scale. So that's what this is all about. And now, in order for us to create positive change and adhere to the recommendations like getting more movement, eating more vegetables, drinking more water, getting adequate amount of sleep, and all of those things that really focus on our wellness, it's a lot easier to do when we're talking to ourselves in a positive way. When we start to talk to ourselves negatively, that's when our behaviors become much, much harder to change. So what she discusses and what I talk to my clients about is really how do we change the narrative? How do we speak to ourselves in a way that's going to motivate us to go forward and really shift us from shaming ourselves and our bodies? Because when we do that, it's only making the process that much harder. And it also is sending out this message that I am worthy based off of the way that I look, that my weight determines my worth. There's just so many things tied up into that really just, it pulls away from the ultimate goal, which is really being happy and confident and healthy, both mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, in a way that allows you to be the best version of you, regardless of what body size you're at. Okay, so that is really why, I aligned strongly with her message and why I wanted to record this episode today. So let's get into it. The first thing you need to know is the way that you talk to yourself matters. If you say something like, I gotta do something about this weight. I can't stand the way that my body looks. I'm so tired of being fat. That already is putting you in that shame, guilt spiral. So that's basically saying like, I'm upset with myself for getting this far. I'm mad at myself. And if you just the tone of that is very depressing, and that can lead to anxiety, depression, the anxiety of like, now I need to do something and it feels very forced. Like I could even hear it in my voice, right? And then the depression of like, I can't believe I let myself get this way. That is not going to motivate you, to push you. So yes, we can acknowledge the fact that maybe you haven't been prioritizing your health in a way that you want to, that aligns with your values and what's important to you. But that's normal. That's something that we need to use self-compassion. It's something that Rebecca talks about a lot, and I talk about a lot with my clients. We need to use self-compassion because if we don't, we're going to stay stuck in that shame spiral. We're going to continue to feel more anxious, more depressed. And those feelings of anxiety and depression and sadness and frustration, they kind of lead to an I don't care attitude. If they do lead to like, I'm going to do something about this attitude, it's often short-lived. Very frequently it leads to like, I don't care, whatever, what's the point? It leads to now a more emotional eating. And then you feel shameful or guilty about eating out of, feeling defeated, and now it's back in that shame spiral. And that's where we really need to, that's why we really need to change the narrative. And this is an example that Rebecca gives in the article that I just recently read. So she says, so when a client, or so if you're listening to this, or you're just a follower or a listener, when you say to yourself, quote, I got to do something about this weight, end quote. it really makes the weight the priority rather than switching the narrative or switching the way that you talk to yourself. And you start to think of things that what you want to be, the type of person you want to be, something that aligns with your values. So regardless of the weight that you're at, really thinking about things like, I want to be the kind of person who blinks, and then follow it up with a benefit. So here's an example. I want to be the kind of person who exercises regularly because it will help me feel better physically and emotionally. So see how it has nothing to do with weight? It's really helping you to switch the narrative to something more positive rather than I got to do something about this weight. Not only could it lead to, the vicious cycle of dieting and restriction, but it doesn't make you want to change. It doesn't make you want to be better. And if it does, like I said, it's probably short-lived. So really start to think about, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be someone who exercises regularly? Do you want to be someone who cooks more at home because it helps you feel good about knowing what you're putting in your body? Thinking about those sort of things. Or maybe I want to be the type of person who cooks at home more often because I want to have a reason to bring the family together. It's important that when you're discussing the benefit that's going to come from becoming that type of person, that it aligns with your values and it has almost nothing to do with weight. Because if weight is the focus, like I said earlier, you're going to be forever disappointed with the progress. Okay? Now, the last part to making sure you end that shame spiral and overcoming body shame is there's actually a lot more to this. So I highly encourage you to read her book, Body Kindness, or get it on audio. I just got it on audio. I just started it, so I haven't completed it yet. But Rebecca talks a lot about different ways to help and overcome body shame. And the last thing that she says in the article that I read is all about how to role play that voice of the inner caregiver. So this is a very popular thing that I talk about with my clients. If you've ever been in therapy, I'm sure your therapist has probably kind of helped you through this as well. And it's really making sure that we're talking to ourselves in a way that we would talk to someone that we love. But what Rebecca talks about, and it kind of takes it a step further, is the role of the inner caregiver is basically saying that that person is inside you. So you are a caregiver. You're often caring for other people, but it's being able to care for yourself in the same way you would others. So it's a lot easier to say to yourself, if you were talking to a friend, right? It would be a lot easier to be like, if your friend was talking about how upset they are about how they got this way and they got to this weight, you would be a lot more compassionate with them. You wouldn't say to them like, yeah, you are so lazy. I can't believe you let yourself get to this place. Like, ugh, you should feel terrible. Like, you would never, ever, ever, ever say that to a friend, to somebody that you loved. You wouldn't. You would say probably, you've been through a lot. You just went through a job change. You just had a newborn baby. You've been going through a divorce, or you were prioritizing getting your master's degree. We were in a global pandemic. Like that, it's normal that you haven't been able to do what you want to do. Right? Like that's very normal. So we have to be compassionate with ourselves, and it's a lot easier to do if we're thinking about talking to somebody else. But what Rebecca talks about in her book and also within the article is that it's really important for you as the individual to know that it is okay to be where you are right now, to make mistakes and to struggle. And at the same time, that inner caregiver is usually very quiet inside of you, but it is there. So we have to do the work to bring it out. So it's no longer you having to flip the script and say to yourself, what would I say to a friend right now? But it's really just being able to kind of slow down, process, check in, and talk to yourself as you. Like truly, truly talk to yourself as you. But to get there, if you're having trouble with being able to kind of, tune into your inner caregiver, it's a lot easier when you then you think about, okay, what would I say to a friend right now? And that can kind of help you get to that process where we're eventually going to get to the place where you're able to talk to yourself that way. All right, so let's recap. To overcome body shame, number one, you need to know that you live in a society that projects to you that you need to change your body to be worthy, to be accepted, and to be happy. That is a lie. That is 100% a lie. Figure out why you want to make these changes. And if it has to do with weight, I'm going to challenge you to get to the root of that. Because if it's just solely because of aesthetics or a number on a scale or this false belief that you're going to be happier once you lose this weight, we need to change the narrative. We need to start focusing on self-care and self-care that's going to produce positive behavior change. In order to do that, we have to change the narrative in our head. Rather than saying, I got to do something about this weight, or something that if you kind of can feel your energy dip, you can feel the depression, the anxiety, the shame kind of sit in when you're sitting in that, we got to flip the script. We really got to switch to things like, what kind of person do I want to be? And why do I want to be that? And make sure that the answer behind that why is rooted in a benefit that is going to be expressive of your values and what's important to you. If you're struggling with this, I highly recommend getting professional help. There's no shame in getting help by a professional. This could be a body image coach, this could be a therapist, or it could be a registered dietitian. This is exactly what I do with my clients. So although they might come to me for weight loss, I always tell them from the beginning, we are shifting our perspective and we're figuring out why is this weight loss important to you. And often it is rooted in societal norms and we'll work through that. And then most of the time though, in addition to that, so as long as we can kind of detach them from wanting to make this change because they won't feel like that'll help them be more accepted by society. And once we can really shift to really focusing on it's because they've been neglecting their self-care and they want to just be the type of person who moves their body more regularly, who eats more balanced and nutrient-dense foods, who no longer fears processed foods, and that's important to them because they know that then they can live a life of energy and food freedom and really just gain that confidence that they know that is deep down inside of them, that they just want it to come out. We can shift the narrative to that. That's when they're really able to not only make peace with food, but make peace with their bodies. All right. So I really hope that this episode helped you. If it did, please let me know what resonated with you. Take a screenshot of it, share it on your story, tag me at tips_with_Tony with an I or the Tips with Tony podcast. You can also always email me with your feedback, tipswithtony@gmail.com. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Definitely don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you get notified when a new episode comes out now every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So 3 times a week. And if you are an old-time listener, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you more than you know. All right, guys, that is it for me today. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.